Tell a story when you were glad you studied the papers before signing them. Serious answers only. My wife and I had 3 days left to sign the contract for buying an apartment. When we received the latest version of the contract, we noticed that our mortgage rate suddenly increased by a small figure like plus 0.2%. We asked what was going on and were told that they had checked our credit history and adjusted the rate according to our current credit score. This left us with a bad feeling, and we decided not to sign anything. By pure chance, a week later, our company was bought out by another company and moved us to another state. If we had bought the house, we would have had to either quit our jobs or sell it immediately. I was going to freelance for a media company. At that time, I was a graduate with 2 years of experience. They sent me a contract, and it stated 1. A salary of $6.50 per hour. 2. An expectation that I could work 37.5 hours a week. 3. I had to use my car for work, with no compensation for wear and fuel. And most importantly, 4. I had to give them all rights to any creative works produced by me 2 years before starting the new position. I declined. My wife and I went to a car dealership to buy our first car. We were planning to get it on an installment plan because the dealership had a special offer for recent college graduates, allowing us to get a loan with no additional interest. Their financier offered us 2 loan options, one for 3 years and another for 5 years. While talking, he kept assuring us that both options were interest-free, so we agreed to the 5-year plan to reduce the payments. Then the same guy handed us the papers and urged us to sign them quickly. But we're not that dumb. We started reading the details. And what do you think? It turned out that the 5-year loan was not part of their offer, and under this contract, we would have to pay 6.5% interest. I believe that's more than zero, right? We got angry and threatened to leave. Realizing they were about to lose customers, they made concessions and gave us a discount on the car. Man, I wonder how many graduates fall for this by signing papers blindly. I was looking for a new room. I went to see another apartment. I liked it so much that I was ready to pay the deposit, but I decided to study the house rules that were sent to me via email just in case. It's important to add that while I was viewing the apartment, they gave me another set of printed rules. They seemed overly strict, especially for such expensive rent, but overall it was okay, and I understood that nothing could be done about it. Thank Odin, I thought to read their email. The rules in that list were fundamentally different from what I was shown on site. There were gems like 1. If you want to bring a guest, you need to write a written request a week in advance, which all residents must approve. 2. Guests can stay only until 10 p.m. 3. Guests are not allowed to stay overnight. 4. When someone visits you, they must leave a $20 fee to cover the cost of toilet water. I read all this and thought, do you want me to pay over $1,000 for a room and not be able to invite friends without hassles? After that, of course, I bailed on them. There were plenty of other funny rules. These just stood out the most. Expensive, but they have premium toilet water. If I had to pay this fee, I would spend my time just flushing the toilet. I found a job 350 miles from home, family, and friends. The conditions were just amazing. The interview went great. Plus, I happened to meet a guy there with whom I had worked many years ago. Everything seemed so cool that I rented an apartment minutes away from work in advance. Formally, I was already hired. I just had to bring in the signed papers. The day before I was supposed to hand them in, I decided to take a quick look at what I was getting into. And then I saw 3 clear problems. I don't remember the exact wording, but I'll try to paraphrase. 1. The position you are applying for is the only position you can have in our company. Although you may receive salary increases, you will never be promoted or change your position. We need people dedicated to their roles. 2. We do not provide any health insurance services. Your health is your responsibility. 3. If you are fired, or if you leave the company, for the next year, you cannot work for a company that has computers or internet access. I was applying for a technical support analyst position. The salary was excellent, but after seeing these points, I ran away from there immediately. The third point would never hold up in court. Never. They're just trying to intimidate people who don't know better. If your employment contract has similar shady clauses that restrict your life after leaving, you can ignore them as they almost never hold any legal weight. My husband and I were buying a house. My husband signed the papers right away, but I had some other things to do, so I could only come by in the evening. I arrive and immediately start studying the loan application. Our creditor sees this and says, "You know, you don't have to read all this, especially since your husband already signed." And I'm like, "No. I want to make sure everything is as I want it to be." Then it turns out that according to the papers, we were borrowing $250,000 at 25%. Yeah, right. I didn't sign anything and left immediately. The creditor started threatening me with a lawsuit, to which I replied that it would be cheaper to go to court than to pay his inflated interest rates. Since then, I handle all the mortgage dealings. And this creditor, by the way, was my husband's school friend. Please tell me you had a serious conversation with your husband. I would be furious if my husband signed such an important document without at least checking the main points. At my last job in a restaurant, they sent us new employment contract terms. I opened it, and there was a non-compete clause, where after leaving the job, you are not allowed to work in the same industry for some time. I told my colleagues about this, and as a result, almost no one signed the new contract. A week later, the management had to revise it. A non-compete clause? In a restaurant? What mysterious secrets does your restaurant hold? This is so that they don't quit. If you don't give a person the opportunity to work elsewhere, they will endure their job to the last. If you think you won't be able to work elsewhere, a non-compete clause only works when it comes to industry secrets that could give another company an incredible advantage. But even in these cases, the court still has to decide whether the clause is justified. Usually, it's 50-50. When I was ready to propose to my girlfriend, I went to a well-known jewelry store for a ring. I wanted to surprise her, but I understood that she might want to exchange the ring for another. So I asked the staff in advance if I could get my $900 back if necessary. They assured me I could. I proposed to her. My fiancé, as I had anticipated, found another ring in another store. So I went back to the original store and asked for a refund. The employee looks at me and says, "No problem, just sign this first." I look at the small piece of paper she gives me, already reaching to sign, when I suddenly see in fine print, "I confirm that this purchase is final and non-refundable." I look at the girl and ask, "Why should I sign this?" She took the paper away, called the manager, and he refunded the full amount to my card without any questions. If anyone's interested, this was at People's Jewelers in Vancouver. The guy who rented me the apartment allowed me to move out a month before our contract ended because he already had a new tenant lined up. To do everything legally, all that was needed was my written consent to move out early and one document that would amend the original agreement. When he brought it to me to sign, I decided to study it thoroughly because I knew the guy had recently been jailed for fraud. And it was the right decision because I found a clause that said if something went wrong with the new tenant, I would still be on the hook and continue to pay rent, even though I no longer lived there. When I caught him on this point, he said, "Oh, right." I added that part to protect myself a bit, and then he stole my deposit. Damn, I need to sue him already. I hate you, John. I am a musician. Once, a label wanted to sign me. The contract was written in very, very broken English. The entire document was filled with idiocy. But the following points particularly stood out. 1. I had to give them my name. 2. I had to give up the copyright to all my old songs. 3. If they didn't sell all physical copies of my music, I would have to compensate for the losses out of my own pocket. No way. Edited. Since you asked, I'll leave a link to my Bandcamp. I make industrial music, which is sometimes very noisy, so be prepared. Sorry, we couldn't sell 12 million of your discs. How do you plan to pay for it? I went to the dealership to pick up my car. They handed me the papers to sign. I started reading, and there was a clause where I had to allow them to lend my personal information to third parties. No way. What kind of dealings did you have with them? It was the first time I brought my car in for repairs. They took it, fixed it, but wouldn't return it without a signature. When I confronted them about this clause, they had to erase my data from the system, after which I just took my keys and left. A mechanic dealer has the right to withhold your car only if you haven't paid for their services. If the bill is paid, they cannot hold your car. Otherwise, it's theft, and you can call the police in such cases. Once, I decided to get a gym membership. Instead of the promised $90 per month, they charged my card $250. Upset that I had been deceived, I went home. I barely slept that night because I was still angry. The next morning, I called them to see if there was any way to cancel the membership, and they told me it was possible only if I moved to an area where their gym didn't exist. The next day, I read our contract and found a clause stating that the membership could be cancelled within 2 weeks without any explanation. It had only been 3 days then. After that, I quickly managed to get it cancelled. Did they refund your money? Yep, every penny. Once, when I was getting hired for a job, the contract stated that I had to work for them for at least 4 years, or else those 4 years would count as training, which I would have to pay for out of my own pocket, if I left early. Some time ago, our school got Wi-Fi. When I first tried to connect to it, I noticed that the terms of the agreement stated that the school could take my phone and examine its contents. I decided I didn't need that, and I still don't use it. I decided to buy a phone with a plan for $200. The salesperson told me they were closing soon and that it would be more convenient if I came back to sign the papers the next day. By morning, the amount in the contract, which had been lying on the table all night, had somehow changed from $200 to $300. I caught them on this and went to another store. We were selling our business. My wife's car was registered to the company, but we didn't intend to sell it. When the lawyer came, we made it clear that we were selling everything: equipment, goods, etc. Except the car. Guess what was in the contract he sent us a week later? Thank goodness we read everything carefully and managed to strike out that clause before the papers went to the buyer. Thank you very much for watching. In the comments, you can share your story of when you were glad you read the papers before signing them. And don't forget to check out our other fresh, hot, and simply delicious episodes. Bye!